Now to a News 10 NBC exclusive investigation at 6. Our chief investigative reporter asks the Monroe County clerk why stacks of documents with personal information on them are just thrown out in the trash. And tonight, we found those documents.
That's right. The DMV's garbage contained forms with social security numbers and detailed information about undercover cop cars. Here's News 10 NBC's chief investigative reporter, Berkeley Brean. Burke?
Deanna, some of the documents were provided to me by a DMV customer upset that he was forced to share his social security number. I found the rest when I rolled up my sleeves and went digging into the DMV's dumpsters.
And in their dumpster, you wouldn't believe what I found. Here's the garbage I found, some of it.
What Dave Machaw found in the dumpster behind the DMV in Henrietta were stacks of documents with names, addresses, and social security numbers. He's had his identity stolen before. When you made that discovery, it must have confirmed your fears.
Yes, it did confirm my fears.
Dave even found papers with information on undercover cars for the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. So today, I went to check for myself. The dumpsters behind the DMV in Henrietta were empty. Nothing in there. So were the ones near the office at the mall at Grease Ridge. But then I went to the DMV's garbage in Irondequoit. So we've got all kinds of plastic bags in here. I found one full of paperwork. And look at the very first document I pulled out. Here's one right here. So here's a license renewal and a social security number on it right there. With all this, I went to the Monroe County clerk. His office runs the DMVs. How do you explain documents with this kind of information in the dumpster behind?
I'm going to tell you this right now. That's completely unacceptable that would be back there. The policy is that they're destroyed or sent to New York State, whichever, depending on what the circumstance is. They should not, by any means, be thrown in a garbage like that. So this is something that will be on.
How do you think it happened?
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm going to investigate that right now. One
of the documents found in the DMV's garbage in Henrietta included the social security number of Kevin Travers. We found him and showed him a copy today.
And now I find out it's just in the friggin' dumpster behind the DMV for anybody to find. I'm on TV, so I can't say what I'd like to say to them, but just, you know, politest way is get your stuff together.
Now, Kevin told us that a staffer threw that document out. The county clerk's office believes most of the documents we found were thrown out by customers and therefore got just put into the regular trash. So because of our story today, the DMV offices will have specific boxes for customers to throw out documents and keep them separate from the garbage. And the clerk's office told me it's going to work with the county's contracted shredding service to destroy that paperwork. Berkeley Brean, News 10, NBC.
Take a look at this mess. All that cleanup. It's been exactly 1 year since we got hit by a powerful windstorm, millions of dollars of damage.
But tonight, our investigators found out that state money to help rebuild is only going to a few select towns. News 10 NBC's chief investigative reporter Berkeley Brean tracked down the towns getting the money and those that aren't. Burke?
Right, first of all, it's been 12 months and not a single town has received a single penny for the windstorm. But we found out some towns didn't even know the state money was there in the first place. The windstorm ripped through Monroe County like a hurricane. 1 month later, the Lake Ontario floods. By July, the governor signed this bill unlocking millions of dollars for flood relief. But look at what the News 10 NBC investigative team found deep inside the bill. I read it to Gate Supervisor Mark Cassini. This is the bill that was passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. And it says that municipalities affected by the windstorm are eligible to apply for a grant under this subdivision. Did you know about this?
Absolutely not.
Supervisor Rossini says the town of Gates suffered $255,000 in damage. Nobody who knew about this told you about it?
This piece of information, this bill, was never communicated to me, and I've spoken to several of my colleagues. They knew nothing about it.
That's because the grant application in the bill never existed. But some towns like Irondequoit and Greece knew about it because they say they were told about the money. Now both are in line to get hundreds of thousands in storm aid. How did you know about getting this sort of aid for wind damage?
Well, we didn't really know. We just reached out to our state representatives and said, you know, is there any type of assistance? You know, we're dealing with quite a bit.
Supervisor Bill Rylick says he was alerted to the aid by Greece Assemblyman Peter Lawrence and Irondequoit Assemblyman Joe Morelli. Greece never filled out a grant application for the money because the application never existed.
So you made calls to your assembly members and they told you this money's
Well, they said they'd see what they could do, and then some point down the road we received a call saying we're able to secure some funding to help reimburse you for some of those costs.
By the way, Greece had almost $1 million in damage. They think they're going to get about $325,000 from the state to pay for that windstorm. So if this is the law, why is the law not being followed so that some towns are getting money and some aren't? That's the question we're going to try to answer in a story coming up new at 6. Berkeley Brean, News 10 NBC.
Thank you, Burke. News 10 NBC is exposing how New York State did not follow a law that would get money to towns hit by last year's windstorm. As we first reported last night, the law signed by the governor says there was supposed to be a grant application to get the money. That never happened. And so, as News 10 NBC Chief Investigative Reporter Berkeley Brean found out, a lot of towns didn't even know the money was available until we told them. Burke?
Right, because the grant system never got set up, Assemblyman Joe Morelli got $2 million from the State Assembly for windstorm damage. But because the application process now goes through his office, we found out some towns got contacted and some did not. Morelli says the windstorm money came up when the state was talking about Lake Ontario flood money.
So I, along with my colleagues in the Assembly, have been reaching out to supervisors, talking to them, and essentially asking them to submit to us what the costs are that were directly as a result of the windstorm.
Two things. First, the law says there should have been a grant application through the State Office of Empire State Development. Second, not every town knew about the money. Based on the phone calls to each town supervisor, News 10 NBC learned that Greece, Irondequoit, Webster, Penfield, and Henrietta were told about the windstorm money, but Chili, Ogden, Gates, Parma, and Monroe County were not.
Greece knew about this, Irondequoit knew about it, Webster, but Monroe County didn't know about the money.
Well, Monroe County's not eligible.
Gates didn't know about the money?
Yeah, Monroe County's not eligible. It's only for towns.
Monroe County got flood relief money from the state, $1.5 million.
I think this process has raised significant concern.
Jesse Sleezer is the county spokesman.
The question is, why did a single assemblyman in the state legislature who represents this area end up having the sole discretion over how these very important dollars were distributed? These were dollars that were intended to offset costs that were ultimately borne by local taxpayers, and they end up getting doled out like pork.
How would you respond to a charge like that?
Well, I would say this, that I saw a need, and I guess I'm not necessarily concerned about what people want to call it. It is an appropriation which I secured, and so that's it, and we're distributing the money according to that.
Gates Supervisor Mark Cassini just tweeted this, quote, grateful to receive a call late this p.m. from Joe Morelli offering to help Gates recoup losses from the March 2017 windstorm. Looking forward to working together on this. Thanks at News 10 NBC for bringing us together on this issue. The storm cost Gates $255,000. It cost the town of Greece close to $1 million, and Greece is in line to get $325,000 in state aid through Morelli's office. Berkeley Brean, News 10 NBC. These scenarios are based on actual events. This is what police recruits go through. I didn't know what I was going to turn around and face. I just knew I had to make a quick decision.
Begin scenario 1.
I'm in the reality-based training room of the Monroe County Public Safety Training Facility.
Hi.
There's a distraught woman holding a fake knife to her throat. My instinct is to walk towards her, but Sergeant Chris Fossler, the sheriff's top firearms expert, holds me back.
And if she did come at you with that knife, would it be a bad day?
Of course it would, and that's something police have to consider. So I retreat and pull out my training weapon.
Sure, but I need you to put the knife down first, okay?
She does, and the scenario ends peacefully. This year, there have been at least 3 police-involved shootings in our area. Terrell Blake was shot and killed October 10th after he went on a murder spree in Rochester. An elderly man with a gun was killed by a Greece police officer in April. In July, a Geneseo cop shot at a suspect who pulled a gun at a routine traffic stop. Every year in this country, more than 950 people are shot and killed by police.
He wants as much positive contact for support as he can.
So I and 2 members of the community, Amanda Donovan and Carrie Coleman, went through the Monroe County Sheriff's reality-based training course. New recruits take 6 months to get here. We did it in 1 day. I got protective gear and a quick lesson on how to draw and hold the training gun.
Begin scenario 2.
Watch what happens in scenario 2.
Hey, back up, back up, back up.
It took me just 5 seconds to fire. What I saw was a police officer on the ground and a man trying to wrestle his gun away. Then I just froze.
So stay with it, right?
Oh,
Scenario
yep.
What do you want to do?
Are you okay? Are you okay?
Begin scenario 2.
Now, watch Amanda and Carrie face the same scenario.
Oh my God. Ooh. Oh my gosh. I don't even know what to say. Sir, drop the weapon.
Amanda hesitated. Carrie, a retired Army Ranger, fired in 4 seconds.
Hey man, drop your weapon! Drop your weapon!
I admit, I was second-guessing myself when my scenario ended.
I feel like it was a little quick on that.
Yeah, no, some are that, literally that fast.
Second guessing yourself or being second guessed is kind of just human nature. It's going to happen.
Begin scenario 2.
But if I was second-guessing what I did, imagine what the public would think.
But it's just important for everybody to realize that these officers are being asked to make a split-second life and death decision under circumstances that are rapid, uncertain, and highly volatile.
Start scenario 3.
At this point, I was a little rattled.
Back up!
In scenario 3, a frantic woman desperate to find her missing daughter came running towards me for help. I pulled my gun on her. Wrong move. Thank goodness I never fired. Finally, scenario 4.
Am I opening my eyes?
When I turned around, I saw 3 people on my left. The threat was to my right.
Hey, who? Back up a second. What's that? Let's back up. I'll kill you. Back up.
The suspect had a crowbar and was threatening to kill me. I kept telling him to back up, but I could not pull the trigger until he came at me again.
Do me a favor, back up.
In my debriefing, I knew I waited too long.
You know, now that I think about it, I probably took too much time.
If he swings and gets close enough, even if you decide to use deadly physical force and you shoot him at this close, he may still make contact with you, which would be a bad day.
We were put into high-pressure, real-life situations and forced to make split-second decisions.
Being a former veteran, you know, it's that split second that can make or break you, can cost you your life, cost someone else's life. They have a hard job. They have a hard job.
It was exhilarating. I have a lot of respect for all of the men and women who protect us. It is, to make split-second decisions like that, I don't even know how they do it.
You can watch all of the scenarios if you go to this story at WHEC.com. Now, what I did was practice. Tomorrow, you're going to hear from a police officer who had to make the decision for real. Berkeley Brean News 10, NBC.